I had a viewer who said he wanted to set the valves on his new to him 426 Hemi, and he was a little queasy about having not done it before. And he wanted a little bit of a tutorial on how to do this. So I told him, well, that's not a problem because I just built this engine and it's time to check the valve lash hot. And so let's do it. And that'll help him on his project. Before you get started on this, you might as well get your tools laid out. Once you warm the engine up, you want your tools ready to go to work. The valve lash is supposed to be hot. That doesn't mean you have to rush it. That doesn't mean that it has to be done in the next 2 minutes. But, be ready for what you got to do. You know that you're going to have a spark plug socket to pull the plugs. You're going to have the tools to take off the valve cover nuts. You're going to have to, when you retorque the heads, I've got a torque wrench here. They used to, 60 years ago when they came out with aluminum heads for Hemis, they said 25 foot-pounds, but then 40 years later or so they cut that back and said now torque them to 20 foot-pounds. So that's fine. We're ready for that. And then of course you'll need feeler gauges and you'll need something to do your adjustment with. I find these to be easy to use. And you'll have to have something to turn the crankshaft with. And you'll have to have some cleanup. When you pull these valve covers, it's liable to drip some oil here, and you don't want to get the oil on your exhaust, especially if you have coated headers. You'll want to wipe right here, and so have something to clean up with. Have something here to put your plugs and valve cover nuts in, and just be ready to do the job before you crank it up and warm it up and everything. Of course, it's easier for me to warm it up on the test stand, and I just hold the temperature at 200, the water temperature, so I like to get the oil up to about 170 just to keep it warm longer. And that's easy by just manipulating the fans and just hold the temperature at 200 for a little bit. And it'll warm the oil up to 170 in a matter of minutes after you get that up to temp. And then we'll need a chart to do this with. This is the 8-position method, which works on anything, but there is also a 4-position method in the book for stock cams. And these are really for radical cams, but the line between when you go from the 4-position to the 8-position isn't really clear, so why bother? Just do it this way. And it should all go real smooth. The main thing we want to check is we want to, of course, set the lash, but we also want to know when you went minus 12 on assembly, so I set them at 8, and we're shooting for 20 on your cam card. It'll tell you what your valve lash is. And we're shooting for 20 hot. So now I'll take off the valve covers and we'll start checking things. I use, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but when I pull these plugs out, I use a Q-tip and I swab the inside of the boot that goes over on the plug. I swab that with this dielectric grease. I don't know if that matters. I'm always worried about pulling this plug wire apart, even though I've never done it in 50 years, but so it makes them go on easier, and I use them here too, actually. Just, how they sometimes get stuck, and so anyway, I use that stuff, and that doesn't mean it's right. I'm just telling you what I do, but so let's get started. I'll take the plugs out, take the valve covers off, we'll move it to top dead center, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, I removed the spark plugs and pulled the valve covers, which, by the way, don't come off as easy when you've got these O-rings in the reservoir there for the plug well or whatever you call it. So they're going to be holding you back a little bit. It's not like lifting off stock street Hemis when you got these 4 O-rings holding it. So just be prepared to have to give it a good pull. So now we go to the chart. With number 1 firing, set 2 intake and 8 exhaust. Okay. Now that's, top dead center, number 1 firing. So let's go to top dead center on the balance. Okay, we got top dead center on the balancer. But the problem is we must be 360 out. We must have number 6 firing. And we do because we've got lash here. So that means 6 is firing instead of 1. So we got to turn it 360 degrees. And you're always turning it in the direction of rotation, which is clockwise when viewed from the front. Okay, so now number 2 intake and number 8 exhaust. Well, that feels pretty good. Wow. I'm impressed. So, on the intake side, it looks like the -12, we didn't know what it was for exactly on an all aluminum engine. You're just guessing. I usually go 7 on a iron block with aluminum heads. So, it looks good. Oh, got too much here. So we loosen up the lock nut and tighten it up. Yeah, that feels pretty good. So then you hold now if you're on a stock street Hemi or whatever, you'll have a screwdriver you got to hold it with and use the wrench. But, hold this tight against you tightening this way. Okay. So, now we've done 2 intake and 8 exhaust. So, according to the chart, now we go 1 intake and 4 exhaust. So we turn it 90 degrees and then we set number 1 intake and number 4 exhaust. And if you don't have a degree balancer, Mopar and everybody else sells the stick-on timing tape where you can do that. Okay, number 4 exhaust. I don't like the way it comes through in the video of making the adjustment here. It's so much easier to see when you use a regular wrench like you would on a stock street Hemi. You, you unloosen this and then turn the inside until you get the lash that you want. Now, and it's not coming through good on the video using that fancy tool because it's blocking all your view of everything, but all you do is loosen up the lock nut, get the lash where you want it by turning that inside screw, and then holding that, tighten it up with the combination wrench or whatever you're using to tighten this up with. And you got to hold this to keep it from turning with this and tightening up your lash. So that didn't come through too good. So now we'll set this one. Actually, I think we've already got it. Yeah, that's a hair on the tight side. Let me go get a wrench and we will just do it the old-fashioned way. On stock street Hemis, you had the slot. It was just to use a big screwdriver, and then so you just loosen your lock, and then using your screwdriver on a street Hemi, and some use these Allen bolts, and you just adjust this till you get 20 thousandths hot. It was a little tight. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now hold your screwdriver or whatever. Get this tight. Don't let this move, that'll tighten up your lash. And we're good. Then always recheck it to make sure you're happy. And I'm happy. So I think that comes through better on the video. Now let's move to the other side. By the way, I should probably mention this. I was talking about these, if you have the O-rings sealing these, and your O-rings come on the Stage 5 heads, the Edelbrock Victor Juniors, and the Keith Black heads, and it may come with others. But of course that makes this difficult to get the valve covers off. They don't just lift off because you've got these 4 O-rings holding it. But I got this tool from Goodson, which I believe that's for pulling valve stem seals. But anyway, it works for pulling these. You have to stick this down in there further than, you don't want to stick them in just a little bit because that area is kind of supported a little bit by the valve cover. But if you stick them in there and then go like this, it pulls these out, and that is wonderful. Now the valve cover comes off like normal. I don't know what you call that tool. It doesn't have a number on it, but sure does work nice. Those things are kind of delicate, you just don't want to be grabbing them with vice grips or something. Okay, so now the number 1 intake. Well, that's pretty close. I don't know. I think I'm happy with that. That other intake was perfect too. So now we go back to the chart. And it says turn it 90 degrees and set the 8 intake and the 3 exhaust. Since we're on this side, I'll move it and we'll do the 3 exhaust. By the way, 20 years ago, I saw a lady at the track was interviewing Don Garlitz, and he was adjusting the valves. So he's turning the motor over and adjusting these valves while he's giving this interview. And I'm going to guess that that whole valve adjustment only took a few minutes. And I want to know where that video is so I can always, when somebody gets on one of the forums that says, how do you adjust the valves in a Hemi, or how long does it take? I want to send them to that video because it's just classic. He doesn't even know he's adjusting the valves. He's just all over it and answering her questions. It's a masterpiece. If anybody knows where that video is, let me know, because I want it. I want to have that to send to people to tell them how to adjust the valves on a Hemi, because it's so good. Okay, I turned it 90 degrees. Now we're going to do the 3 exhaust and the 8 intake. And I'll use these tools to make it a little clearer. And after this, it's just a repeat of turn it 90 degrees in the direction of rotation, and then do the 2 valves it says to set, and then turn it 90 degrees. And when you get done, you're done. Okay, so we're on 3 exhaust. And these have been loose, more so than the intakes. Yeah, that's a little looser, yeah. Let's do it the old-fashioned way with this wrench. Okay. Turn this thing till it feels good. I think I'll just go too far and then work backwards, since that wrench won't work against me that way. Okay. It wasn't very much off. And that feels good. Okay, 3 exhausts. Now we'll do 8 intake. A hair loose, not much. I didn't think they were. I'm happy there. I didn't bring my card over here. Okay. I'm happy. So now you turn it 90 degrees, do the next 2, turn it 90 degrees, turn the next 2, and then you'll be done. Then put it all back together and torque the plugs to 20 foot-pounds. The valve covers, you'll have to be your best judge on that, because the stamped steel valve covers, I'm not really good with them. I get oil leaks, you know, and I don't seal them up good, because I know I'm taking them off sometime, and I don't want to have to scrape residue here. I generally glue it to the valve cover, because I want one side glued. You're just trying to keep from having leaks, you know what I mean? But it's, you know, some people, they pull them down tighter than I do, but I'm afraid to bend the valve covers, you know, and that's why I like the cast stuff. But I understand that everybody can't do cast.